Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Israel from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Today is May 15th, 2021, and we haven't done a podcast in probably since Passover, Pesach. It's been over a month. It's probably been 2 months, actually, 50 days almost, because Pesach is next weekend. It's on Sunday, May 23rd. Now, some people are on Facebook, I've noticed, are saying that Pentecost, Shavuot is tomorrow. And I can't for the life of me imagine why they think that, unless they explain to you, for those who don't understand, the calendar yet, and they're kind of curious why some people are keeping Pentecost or Shavuot tomorrow. Well, can you see this calendar up on the screen? Yes, you can. Okay. So as you can see, April 4th right here, we started celebrating Pesach right here, which was March 28th, through April 4th, right? So according to the Torah in Leviticus 23, it says that you are supposed to begin the count of the weeks leading up to the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot. You're supposed to begin the count on the Feast of First Fruits. First Fruits would be Resurrection Day. Well, when is Resurrection Day? Let's just take a look here at Leviticus 23. I'm going to pull it up for you guys so that you can read along with me. Leviticus 23. So it says, and Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Okay, so what this is telling us is this is the first weekly Sabbath after Passover. Okay, and we know this because in the previous verse, it says that, tells us that the Pesach is on the first day, or the 14th day of the first month, okay? And then on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you are supposed to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. And then it says, so we know that on the 15th day of the first month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then here it's telling us that we are to wave the sheaf of the first cut barley, okay? The barley. It's the morrow after the Sabbath. Now, a lot of people think that this is referring to the annual Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So they begin counting on the 15th, the day after Pesach. But no, this is actually referring to the weekly Sabbath. How do we know? Well, there's actually 2 different words in Hebrew for Shabbat or Passover or Sabbath. Okay, so I just went ahead and switched to KJV Plus because KJV Plus enables you to see the words in Hebrew. So here, the word for Sabbath is number 7676 in the Strong's Concordance, and it says intermission. That is specifically the Sabbath, okay? However, there's another word for Sabbath, and I'm going to show it to you. It's further down in the chapter, and it's 7677, okay? And see if I can find it, 7677. I know it's in here. It's just a matter of finding it. There we go. Okay, 7677. Shabbaton, a Sabbatism or a special holiday. Okay, so the way the English translators translate the word for Shabbaton, they call it a Sabbath also. So it's hard to distinguish in English which Sabbath they're talking about. So if the word is number 7677, Shabbaton, it's an annual Sabbath. It's a special holiday. But if it's the weekly Sabbath, then it's just 7676, Shabbat. So this is how we know that this is a weekly Shabbat that we are supposed to start counting the morrow after the weekly Sabbath. This is following Passover, okay? And you are supposed to count 7 Sabbaths. And here it says in Leviticus 23:15, and you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath. It's the day after the Sabbath. See, I actually read in the writings of Josephus, the Jewish historian, that in first century Jerusalem, the temple was being controlled by the Sadducees. And it was the Sadducees who determined that on the Sabbath, as just minutes before the sun went down, the high priest would wave the first cut barley. That's when he waved it, just minutes before the sun went down on Saturday night, the Sabbath. So he began the first cut barley and waved it before Yahuwah. Now, this would have been precisely when our Messiah would have resurrected from the dead. This is why he said, I am Lord of the Sabbath, because he resurrected on the Sabbath day, okay, just before the sun was going down. He resurrected at the close of the Sabbath. Okay, so the high priest in first century Jerusalem would begin the waving of the sheaf just minutes before sundown. Now, some people might say, but that's working on the Sabbath. Well, you see, the kind of work that we are prohibited from is secular work that involves earning a paycheck. But for the priests in the temple, they were allowed to do work that was related to keeping the feasts. So the high priest, was allowed to wave the first cut barley because it was prophetically pointing us to the resurrection of Messiah. Okay, so he would start with the first cut barley minutes before the sun went down on Saturday night, and then the remainder of the sheaves the people would bring to the temple, and they would do the remainder of the sheaves the next day, all day Sunday. The next day, the first day of the week, is when they would complete the sheaves, would be on a Sunday. Okay, so the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, if you will, Shavuot, is always going to land on a Sunday, always. Now, some people object to that and they say, oh, no, you're supposed to start counting from the annual Sabbath of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, if that's the case, guess what? We could only keep the Feast of Weeks when? Once every 7 years. Okay, because if you're counting 7 annual Sabbaths before you can keep Pentecost, that means you can only keep Pentecost once every 7 years. So that's ridiculous. Obviously, we're counting the Feast of Weeks from the weekly Sabbath, okay?
Yeah, because otherwise that would be a Shabu of weeks.
Exactly, yeah. So just to let you know, the reason why some people are keeping Pentecost tomorrow is because there are those who follow the dark moon for when they keep the feast days. So those who follow the dark moon, the rabbinical Jewish calendar, they kept Passover here on April 3rd, right? So that means they started the count here. And that means that that's why they're keeping their Pentecost tomorrow. But for those of us who believe in sighting the new moon, okay, then we started it here on April 4th, which means we have to count 7 complete weeks. So this is week number 1, week number 2, 3, 4, okay? And then 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 weeks are not completed until next Saturday, the 22nd. As soon as the sun goes down next Saturday night, begins the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot. So next weekend. Now, just this year, the Christian church happens to have it right. The Christian church is keeping Pentecost on May 23rd. So they're right this year. Sometimes they're not right. Sometimes they're keeping it, a whole month later than we are. But this year, they're right. But I've seen some people on Facebook saying that tomorrow is Pentecost. Why? Because they started their count one day earlier. Okay. Or some of them are counting from the Feast of Unleavened Bread. They're counting from the Sabbath of the annual Sabbath, which does not make sense, but that's when they're beginning their count. Okay. So I just wanted to clear that up because some people are confused. So yes, next weekend, next Sunday is the Feast of Weeks, Pentecost. Now we are going to be talking about who are the 144,000. However, before we get into that, I want to share this brief little blog that I wrote just last night. Actually, I wrote it earlier in the week, but I copied and pasted it from my Facebook wall and put it on into a blog. I'm not really done with it. It's really just kind of like Cliff Notes at this point. It's going to expand and become a longer blog. So here it is, Ezekiel and the parable of the woman in Matthew 13:33. So one day last week, maybe a couple weeks ago, I was talking on the phone with my son Elijah, and he said that he'd been wondering why 1/3 of any integer of 1, 10, 100, 1,000, and so on came out to 33333 and on to infinity. However, 2/3 of the same integer came out to 66666 to infinity. I was amazed that he had this revelation because instantly I understood the meaning of these mathematical equations. My reply to him has to do with the prophet Ezekiel and his Nazirite vow, which ended with him shaving off his hair. Okay, see, Ezekiel was told to shave off the hairs of his head and beard and to divide them into 3 parts. Okay, the first part, representing the remnant of Israel, was to go inside the corner of his garment where the fringes or the tzitzits go. To learn more about the commandment to wear the fringes on the 4 corners of the garment, go to Numbers 15:38 and Deuteronomy 22:12. And another third was to be burned with fire. And the other third was to be struck through with the sword. Okay. So this will be the judgment that comes to those who take the mark of the beast. I believe what's taking place right now in Israel could very well be this end time judgment. So the remnant, those that belong to Yahuwah, who have their father's name in their foreheads, They are the remnant. They will go into, they represent the ones that are in the corner of the garment where the fringes go. Then 1/3 shall be burned by fire. We saw the Temple Mount burned with fire earlier this week. I'm not saying this is the ultimate fulfillment, but this is probably the beginning of this fulfillment. And then another third were struck through with a sword. So that means that they would be killed by the sword. Now, interestingly, I need to look up this word sword in the Hebrew, but I'm wondering perhaps, and I need to look that up. Hang on a minute. I'm just wondering if the word there for sword could have to do with the needle, you know?
Or like those little swords that hold your sandwich together.
No, I don't think so. Okay. Let me see if I can find it in Ezekiel. Struck through with the sword. Because if that's the case, then that would kind of make sense. Because sometimes, the English translation is less than adequate, and we have to go to the Hebrew to find out what is the word there for sword. So bear with me here. Trying to look it up. Sword, Ezekiel. Bible Gateway used to allow. There we go. You shall burn, Ezekiel 5:2. Okay, let me look it up. Ezekiel 5. Ezekiel 5. Okay, it says, you shall burn with fire 1/3 part in the midst of the city when the days of the siege are fulfilled, and you shall take 1/3 part and smite about it with a knife. Okay. And so that right there, kereb for knife, it says knife, sword, or other sharp implement. Dagger, knife, sword. Okay, so it can be any sharp instrument. And 1/3 part shall scatter in the wind, and I will draw out a sword after them. Okay, there we go. The same word, kereb, which is a sharp instrument. So, yeah, it could be possibly the jab. I don't know. But I have to be careful not to use that word, the V word, because we're doing a podcast and it's going to go up on YouTube later, and YouTube flags you if they hear that word mentioned. So, so but getting back to the blog. So, the ones in whom the Father Yahuwah's name is in their foreheads, Revelation 14:1 says that the 144,000 have their Father's name in their foreheads. They're the ones that will be reserved in the corner of the garment where the tzitzits are placed. Ezekiel's prophecy aligns perfectly, with Zechariah 8:23. And here it is. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt. Now that Hebrew word for skirt is kanaf, and it literally means the corner of the garment where the fringes are placed. Okay. So this is telling us that in that day, this is referring to the last days. Anytime in the Tanakh or the Old Testament, and you see in those days, or if you say in that day, when you see that, it's referring to the last days, the end of days. In those days, it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt or the kanaf, the corner of the garment of him that is a Yahudi, a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. So the parable of the woman and the 3 measures of meal ties into this. You see, the 1/3 and the 2/3 also gives us understanding about the parable of the woman. In the parable, she took 3 measures of meal, and what did she do? She worked in leaven into the 3 measures of meal until the whole ball of dough was worked in with leaven. Now, in this parable, the leaven doesn't represent sin. It represents the gospel message. So there's three groups of people within the household of faith that will be divided up according to their works of obedience. Number one, there's the remnant from the house of Judah. Two, the remnant from the house of Joseph or Ephraim. And number three, the remnant from among the Gentile nations that are grafted in to the two houses of Israel. So the number three represents resurrection and witnesses. Obviously, it is because our Messiah resurrected on the third day from his crucifixion. Additionally, in 1 John 5:7-8, it tells us that there are three witnesses that testify in heaven to the oneness of our Elohim, the Father, the Word, and the Ruach HaKodesh. Now, of course, in Christianity, they call it the Trinity. We don't believe that the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit are a Trinity per se, because the Trinity implies that there's three separate persons. We don't believe that. We believe that the Father, the Word, and the Holy Spirit are the same being, the same Spirit, manifested in three different ways. Sort of like water or H2O that can manifest as water or ice or vapor. It's H2O no matter what. It's the same substance, only manifested in three different ways. It remains the same substance. It doesn't change into a different substance. The number 6 is the number of mankind or humanity that have not been redeemed by the number 7, which is the day of rest, the Shabbat. Therefore, our Messiah resurrected on Shabbat just before sundown. This is why he said, I am master of the Sabbath. The number 7 in Hebrew is Sheba, and it means to covenant, to redeem by an oath, to take an oath by repeating 7 times. So if you are among the 1/3 that keep the covenant, evidenced by what? The 7th day and the 7th annual feasts, you will be among the resurrected, those that are resurrected with Messiah. Hence, you will be among the 3 to infinity. That 1/3. If you are among the 2/3 that worship the beast and do not obey the covenant of Yahuwah, you will be among the lawless one, the beast. Hence, 66666 to infinity. So that was kind of an interesting revelation. Yahuwah works his revelation into mathematics. Everything in mathematics has a prophetic meaning. Okay? Now, I made this graphic here, and I explain it to you. As you can see, it says the beast wants to counterfeit Yahuwah's image, name, and number. I made this graphic last month. It was April 15th. And over here, you can see a graphic that says Genesis 1:26, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. And 666 is actually the way that he created the carbon atom. Is made up of 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons. Genesis 1:27 says, so Elohim created man in his own image. So the mark of man, as we read in Revelation 13:18, is the number 666. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So man's number is 666. We've been given by our Creator this carbon atom. So what does the devil want to do? He wants to counterfeit the 666 DNA, okay? And here you have a picture right here. It says black goo, carbon, 666, and the mark of the beast. And then it says carbon, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, 6 protons. And then right here it says bacteriophage AI nanobot goo. And then you've got this little 3 triangle logo that stands for the Wayland Corporation, but it is part of the mark of the beast because a triangle has 3 sides. Okay. So it's, each triangle is 222, right? 222, 222. So each triangle has the value of 6. So 666, 3 triangles.
So, in other words, 3 sides and 3 points. So each triangle represents 6.
Right.
And then times 3. Yeah.
Right. So some people might object that, man's number is 666, but stay with me and you'll understand. Okay. So in Genesis 1:27, it says, so Elohim created man in his own image. And as you can see, the 4 letters to our creator's name, Yahuwah, have the numerical value of 10, 5, 6, and 5. So the letter Hey, the Hebrew letter Hey is the 5th letter. The letter Wal is the 6th letter. Okay. And the Yod, the letter Yod is the 10th letter. Okay. So that's encoded into our DNA is the name of Yahuwah. So the jab, the sorcery jab, is designed to send in CRISPR technology, which is virtually like a pair of scissors that goes in and splices out the piece of your DNA that contains the father's name on it, and it inserts a different name onto your DNA. That name will be this right here, okay? The 666. So instead of, the father's name, you will no longer be named by his name. You'll be named by the beast. So the mark of the beast involves 3 different things that Satan wants to counterfeit from the creation account in Genesis. 1, the image of man created by Yahuwah, Genesis 1:26 through 27. The image of the beast is what he wants to replace you with, Revelation 13:14. Number 2, the name of Yahuwah encoded onto the DNA of mankind by breathing into him the breath of life. You see, Yahuwah completed the creation of mankind on the 6th day. But what happened? It was on the 7th day that he breathed into him the breath of life. So if you are numbered by the number 6, that means you're only in your flesh carnal creation state. It's when you keep the Shabbat that you receive the breath of Yahuwah. You receive his breath in you, his ruach, his spirit. So it wasn't until now the scripture doesn't tell us that this is when he breathed into Adam the breath of life specifically, but when you look it up, the chronology of when he did the breathing was after the Sabbath. After he introduced the Sabbath is when he breathed into Adam the breath of life. So it doesn't specifically say it, but looking at the chronology, it seems to me that he breathed into Adam after he introduced the Sabbath. Okay? So that's Genesis 2:7. Okay? And of course, the devil wants to replace, the DNA with his name and number, the name and number of the beast. Revelation 13:17 through 18. Number 3, the Sabbath of Yahuwah, which is his seal or mark upon mankind. Genesis 2:2. So the global reset is Satan's counterfeit Sabbath and counterfeit Jubilee. Revelation 13:17 through 18. Go with me real quick to Genesis 2:7. You'll see what I'm talking about. Genesis 2:7. Okay. And it says, and Yahuwah Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now, it doesn't specifically say that this took place on the 7th day. However, take a look at the verses previous to that. Okay? Genesis 2:1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, Elohim ended his work which he had made and rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. Genesis 2:3. And Elohim blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which Elohim created and made. So you see, up until that point, he had only formed man. Man was formed, but there was no breath in him. Okay, so let's go to Genesis 1, verse 31. Okay, it says, and Elohim saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. So he formed man, but he had not breathed into him yet. Okay, it doesn't say he breathed into man yet. Now in the next chapter, now it says he's finished with all his work and he's resting on the seventh day. And then you go down here to verse 7, and Yahuwah Elohim formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Now, like I said, it's not clear. It's not telling us specifically that he breathed into man the breath of life on the Sabbath or after the Sabbath. It doesn't tell us this, but to me, it's a hint, because he doesn't mention breathing into Adam the breath of life until after he introduces the Sabbath. So my hunch, my hunch is, I believe he didn't breathe into Adam the breath of life until it was Shabbat. And I can't prove that, right? But that's just my hunch. Okay. So, so it's one thing to just be created in his image, physically. It's when you have his breath in you, his ruach in you. Okay. That's when you become a living soul. So if you understand what the name is, right? Go with me to Song of Solomon 1:3. Song of Solomon 1:3. Okay. It says, because of the savor of your good ointments, your name is as ointment poured forth. Therefore, do the virgins love you. Okay. So this word oil, ointment, is what the King James Version uses, but it's oil. It's shemen. Okay. It says grease, especially liquid from the olive, figuratively richness, anointing. So the word for oil is shemen, and the word for name is Shem. Those two words are very similar. The shemen of Hashem, the oil of his name. And it says here, an appellation, as a mark, a mark. See, we are marked by his name. His name is encoded into our DNA. We are marked by his name. Okay. And the oil has to do with the anointing. You see, once we are filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, we are marked by him. We have his name in us. By the oil of his name, we have the breath of life. Okay. So his oil, his name, is directly connected with the breath, the Holy Spirit, the anointing of the Holy Spirit. There's an anointing on his name. So once that DNA encoded with Yahuwah's name on it has been cut out, you no longer have his breath in you. Okay? The lights go out. See, that's just tragic. Okay, and here we have a menorah, 7-branch menorah, with the Father Yahuwah's name in paleo letters, Yod, He, Wah, He. Okay, and Genesis 2:2, where he introduces the Sabbath. And then right here we have Satan's grandest lie, transhumanism, mark of the beast. And ye shall become as gods, knowing good and evil, Genesis 3:5. You see, it says in the book of Revelation that they shall plead for death and they shall not find it. What this is going to do, the sorcery jab is going to do to people, is they will be literally dead spiritually. They will be dead, but yet when they turn on all the 5G and those that have all the chips in them, they will be reanimated, sort of like the Frankenstein movie, and so this whole idea of a zombie apocalypse is no laughing matter. It's not sci-fi. It's for real. People will become just like the Frankenstein. That whole Frankenstein movie was basically the elite telling us, even back then, as far back as, when movies first started in the 1920s, they were telling us that they had this plan. In fact, even in the Jewish Talmud, they talk about creating this animated being. I forget what it's called. There's a name for it in Hebrew. It's not Gilgamesh. It's like, I don't know. They talk about, creating this animated creature, which I believe is going to be like the image of the beast. Okay. Daniel 2:42 says, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Now, many of you have been seeing lately, I've been seeing it too. Basically, it's the magnets that are sticking to people's arm where they have taken the jab. And let's see if I can find it. Yep, here we go. So, as you saw, iron mixed with muddy clay, they are mixing themselves with the seed of men, but they are not clinging to each other, even as iron does not mix with clay. So this was from Google. It says, explain to the students that there's only one kind of metal that magnets stick to, namely iron. Sometimes it is mixed with other metals to make steel. Therefore, steel also sticks to a magnet. Therefore, if a magnet sticks to an object, the object is iron or steel. Okay, so those who took the jab, sorcery jab, are going to have the iron in them. Okay, the steel or the iron mixed with clay. What does clay represent? Well, when Yahuwah formed Adam from the dust of the earth, that word for dust in the Hebrew means dirt or clay. So man was created out of the dirt or the dust of the earth, the clay. We are made of clay, and now they're injecting into humans the iron to try to make them into cyborgs. Okay? And this is a book written by a guy, Pastor Mike Hoggard, called Triple Helix, Genetically Changing Mankind into Beasts. So I created this meme to give you some context, okay? And let's see here. So, as I've already said, the mark of the beast involves three things that Satan wants to counterfeit from the creation account. The image of man, he wants to counterfeit in exchange for the image of the beast. The name of Yahuwah encoded into the DNA of mankind by breathing into him the breath of life in exchange for what? The number and the name of the beast. Revelation 13, 17 through 18. And number 3, the Sabbath of the Creator, which is the seal or the mark upon mankind. In exchange for what? The global reset, Satan's counterfeit Sabbath and Jubilee. Now, I want to share this with you guys. This is something that just came to my attention just last night. It's right here. It's still hidden from my feed, but this is from April 29th. It says, Trump's latest illusion, I am the father of the vaccine. Now, what does this remind you of? I am your father. Okay. The movie Megamind, which I already explained all that a few weeks ago on Facebook. I've got a whole blog about the movie Megamind. But in the movie Megamind, Megamind shapeshifts into this guy that looks like Marlon Brando from The Godfather, right? And what does he do? He injects this guy named Hal, who is Roxanne Ritchie's cameraman. He injects him with the DNA of, what do you call it? Metro Man. He takes, Metro Man has faked his death in the movie, and there's a piece of his dandruff on one of his capes. So they take the piece of dandruff and they infuse Hal with the DNA of Metro Man. Now, Metro Man is supposed to be like a Messiah-like figure. He's, everybody loves him. He's the savior of Metro City. He fakes his death, and so they basically inject Hal. Now, what's interesting about Hal is HAL. Hal is the name of a supercomputer in another movie. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's the name of a supercomputer. And in fact, let me go there real quick.
It's 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh, okay, yeah. HAL supercomputer. So it's called the HAL 9000. HAL 9000 is a fictional artificial intelligence character and the main antagonist in Arthur C. Clarke's Space Odyssey series. So in the film Megamind, he is a Nephilim from another planet. He's blue. Did you know that the term blue bloods, you know where that came from? Yeah, I've often wondered because there was a TV series called Blue Bloods, and it's all about this Roman Catholic family that they're all involved in law enforcement. But guess what? I looked it up. Guess what Blue Bloods represents? Blue Bloods is another.
It's a euphemism.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
for a Nephilim.
Yeah, for a Nephilim, it's those who belong to the elite families. The Nephilim families. Okay, in other words, the global elite. There's like 13 Illuminati families that are part of the, they're supposed to be royal bloodline supposedly, but they do satanic rituals and they drink the blood of demons and so forth. Well, Trump's family claimed that they're part of the Merovingian bloodline. And so in the movie Megamind, he shapeshifts into this guy that looks like Marlon Brando from the Godfather movie. And he says to Hal, "I am your space father." Right after he injects him. Okay, he says, I am your space father. Gary does that so well. He is so good at impersonations. I just do it again. It's so funny. Dude. I am your space father. Exactly. It's exactly what he does. I am your space father. So this is like this is none of this is an accident. Okay? He comes out and says, "I'm the father of the," I'm not going to say the word. "I am the father of the," he wants us to call it the Trump scene, okay?
Of the jab.
Yeah, exactly. So now, of course, the media are saying that's his delusion. No, it's not a delusion. I don't care if the media is calling it a delusion. It's not a delusion. That he really is the father of it.
I mean, this one.
Yeah, exactly.
He made it happen. He gave the funding. He gave the directive.
Exactly. Now, people are denying that he said this, okay, on Twitter. He probably posted it and deleted it right away. Who knows? But somebody saved it. And it was on October 5th. It was when he got sick, supposedly, with the coronavirus. And supposedly, this is what he tweeted. "My blood is the V word." And of course, if you go to Snopes, they will deny it and say, "Oh, no, that was never said." Look, if Snopes denies something, it means it's true. Okay.
I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but it's highly suspect for sure.
Yeah. So I made this meme, okay? And as you can see, it's got Tom Hanks from the Da Vinci Code movie. And if you know anything about the Da Vinci Code movie, in that movie, they're looking for the Holy Grail. Now, most people, when they think of Holy Grail, they think of the cup that our Messiah drank from at the quote-unquote Last Supper. But those who are involved in the Merovingian bloodline, there are these elite families in Europe that think that they are directly descended from the union of Jesus. And I'm using the word Jesus, the name Jesus on purpose, because that's what the Catholic Church calls him, Jesus. They believe they are the direct descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And this is why in Trump's family, his father, Fred, his middle name was Christ. Fred Christ Trump. His grandmother, Elizabeth, was Elizabeth Christ Trump, because they truly believe they are descended from Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. And they call themselves the Merovingians. Okay. So in this movie, Tom Hanks is looking for the Holy Grail. They call the womb of Mary Magdalene the Holy Grail because, and this is going to sound gross, but they believe her womb is holy because, quote unquote, Jesus copulated there. So it's disgusting. I know. Okay. I even hate to say it. It makes me cringe. But Tom Hanks Um, you'll remember right after the coronavirus first started, he and his wife Rita supposedly contracted the virus. And then all of a sudden there was news reports that they're using Tom Hanks's blood to create a jab, a shot.
Yeah,
And
they're looking for the antibodies, and that was
yeah.
supposedly the same with Trump.
So what they're doing is they're letting us know who the Nephilim are. These people, I highly suspect that Tom Hanks, we thought he was a good guy, whatever, but there's hints all over Instagram that he's into pedophilia. So, Tom Hanks being involved in the vaccine and, I said the word. Gary's going to have to, maybe cut it out.
I think you meant to say Maxine.
Yeah. Him being involved in it, and him actually right here on you can see it on Instagram, or I think this is Twitter. It says this is Tom Hanks at Tom Hanks. Here's last week's bag of plasma. See, he donated his plasma for the jab. Okay, these are all hints. People need to understand. Then you got Donald J. Trump Jr. This is what he said on Twitter. He says, imagine this. Trump gets all better and donates his plasma to develop a corona treatment. And then all the liberals have to get vaccinated with Trump's blood. And he thinks that's funny. And then Donald J. Trump Jr. says, OMG, he needs to go donate now. Okay. So they're saying this tongue in cheek because they recognize most people won't take this seriously, but they're giving you a hint. Okay. They're letting you know that this is for real. Okay. Luke 17:26 says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. Okay, so what was going on in the days of Noah? Genesis 6:4 says there were Nephilim. That's the Hebrew word that is used there for giants. There were Nephilim, giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of Elohim came in unto the daughters of Adam, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men. That word in Hebrew for mighty men is gibor, giants, which were of eternity. Okay, the word there in Hebrew is olam. In the King James, it says they were of old. Well, what does that mean, they were of old? Well, it's the Hebrew word eternity. In other words, these are supernatural beings. They're eternal beings, fallen angels. So these giants were of eternity. They were of old. They come from the eternal world. Men of renown. Okay, that word renown is Shem, name, mark. In other words, they've been marked with the mark of who? The beast. Okay, so they belong to Hasatan. They're lost already. There's no redemption for these fallen angels. They've already been marked by Hasatan. So Leviticus 7:26 through 27 tells us, you shall eat no manner of blood. Whoever eats any manner of blood, even that soul shall be cut off from his people. So to be injected with blood, okay, which is present in all the jabs, okay, you are going to be cut off just by virtue of being injected with somebody else's blood. And now I understand why the Jehovah's Witnesses don't do blood transfusions. I used to think that they were crazy. Now I get it. I'm not saying I agree with Jehovah's Witnesses on, there's a lot of things they're wrong about, but they're right about that, okay? Acts 15:29 says, you shall abstain from meats offered to idols and from blood and from things strangled. Why? Because animals that have been strangled, their meat is gorged with blood. So we are commanded not to partake of blood because why? Because there's always the danger that you can be contaminated with a disease, or worse yet, Nephilim DNA. Yahuwah, knowing this, because of what happened in the days of Noah, he strictly forbids us to partake of anything with blood in it. Okay? So, because even Nephilim can, go into animals, and that's why they have these, created beings that are half animal and half human, like Pegasus, and, because they figured out a way to splice the genome and create these hybrid creatures. Okay. I know this sounds all crazy to some of you, and you probably think I'm a nutcase, but that's okay. All right, so now let's go to the blog called the 144,000. And, I really wanted to share all of that with you guys because I believe that this gives us some pretext, to understand who the 144,000 are, okay? The 144,000 have not been contaminated with the mark of the beast, okay? So I'm going to move forward with this blog, and it's somewhat long. It might take us 2 weeks. We might have to do a part 2 next week, but I'm going to try to get through most of it. See, what time is it right now? 11:12? Well, we're supposed to start at 10, and we're supposed to go for 2 hours until noon. So what we'll do is I will read as far as I can go until I get to 12 noon. And when we get to 12 noon, we will stop and we will do a part 2 of this teaching, who are the 144,000. And hopefully Gary will have this teaching edited and put up onto YouTube by later this evening. I don't know if he will or not, but I'm going to try to make it as free of, editing content as possible, so he doesn't have to do a lot of edits here. Okay, so I wrote this blog back in 2004. As you can see, the copyright says August 2004, but I copied it into this blog last year. Who are the 144,000? Well, there's 2 places in the book of Revelation, chapters 7 and 14, where we read about a specific group of people called the 144,000. Okay? Hazon. Revelation 7:4 says, "And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel." Okay? Then in Hazon, or Revelation 14:1, it says, "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads." Okay? Now, from these 2 verses, I believe we can surmise that these are 2 separate groups of 144,000. Now, before you think I'm crazy, please hear me out. I've been suspecting this since the year 2002. I began to notice the characteristics of the 145,000 in Revelation 7 are different characteristics than the 144,000 that are named in Revelation 14. And we're going to uncover that, okay? It always makes me chuckle when I hear people tell me they believe they have been chosen to be among the 144,000. It's not that there's anything wrong with believing that, so long as we realize that the number represents a much larger integer than we suppose. You see, Rebecca, Isaac's wife, was given a prophecy in Genesis 24:60 that she would become the mother of thousands of millions. And she's the grandmother of Israel. So obviously, thousands of millions, that's a huge number. I mean, a huge number. That's a lot bigger than 144,000, okay? If we limit the chosen ones to only 144,000 souls, it contradicts what is written in the Torah and prophets. At first glance, it would appear in Revelation 7 that there are only 12,000 individuals from each of the 12 tribes of Israel that are being numbered. In order to get a better grasp of what is being presented in Revelation 7, we should go to the first place where the tribes of Israel were being numbered. Okay? Now, there is a rule of interpretation called the law of first mention. And what it means is the first time something is mentioned in the Bible, that sets the precedence. So that means moving forward, when that same concept is presented again, it usually has the same meaning. Most of the time it does. Okay? So the first mention of these tribes being numbered is in the book of Numbers. Go figure. See, the sum of the congregation was numbered according to the house of their fathers. This means that the number of each tribe represents heads of households, not individuals. Okay? You know, when we read about the 144,000, you'll notice it doesn't say 144,000 individuals. It doesn't. It says 144,000. That's all it says. So we're left to wonder, well, what does that mean? 144,000 individuals, 144,000 tribes, 144,000 clans, families, you know, it doesn't tell us. Okay. So let's read Numbers. Bamidbar, Numbers 1. Okay. Starting with verse 2. And Yahuwah tells Moses, take you the sum of the congregation of Israel after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls. Okay? From 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel, you and Aharon shall number them by their armies. Aha! You shall number them by their armies. So guess what? 144,000 is literally speaking of 144,000 armies. That's a huge number. It's not talking about individuals. Okay? And then in verse 4 it says, and with you there shall be a man of every tribe, every one head of the house of his fathers. So when the tribes are being numbered, okay, they are numbered according to the heads of the house of their fathers. I'm not going to list all the names, okay? But the last verse, 16, says, these were the renowned of the congregation, princes of the tribes of their fathers, heads of thousands in Israel. Oh, wow. So that means that each individual is a head over thousands. Okay, so when you're numbering 144,000, it's talking about 144,000 leaders, 144,000 commanders of armies. So the number 144,000, it's much, much larger than we can imagine. It's a much bigger number. Okay, and so let's go here. There has been much speculation and misunderstanding surrounding this elusive number of people termed as the 144,000. We can begin to unravel the mystery simply by defining the terms in the Hebrew language. So the mystery behind this word thousand, we are about to unravel that. In Hebrew, the first letter of the alphabet is Aleph, which is the equivalent to the Greek letter Alpha or the letter A in English. Our Messiah described himself as the Alpha and the Omega, which is the Greek translation. However, we have some hints that the book of Revelation was first spoken to John in the Hebrew tongue. Revelation 9:11 and Revelation 16:16 gives us a hint that Revelation was given to John in the Hebrew tongue. Therefore, we could accurately say that our Messiah represents the first and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In the following passages, our Messiah described himself as the Alpha and the Omega, or the Aleph and Taw. In other words, the first and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet. What is interesting is that the Hebrew word for thousand, as seen in the dimensions to the temple in Ezekiel 40 through 48, is the letter Aleph, which literally means the head of the ox. The Hebrew Strong's Concordance gives us the definition for Aleph, okay? It's number 505. Now they have it spelled like Aleph, like elephant, right? Which kind of makes me wonder if that's where the word elephant came from. But it's really spelled with an A. It's just that in the modern Hebrew alphabet, they've replaced the A. Oftentimes they replace the A with the short E sound. So it's really the Aleph, okay? It's number 505, and it literally means the ox's head, being the first letter of the alphabet, okay? And this eventually used as a numeral, 1,000. So the number 1,000 literally means, okay, 1,000. So the word 1,000 just means the first Hebrew letter, Aleph, okay? This stems from these two root words, okay? So there's another root word, Aleph, number 504, and it literally means a family, an ox or a cow. And then there's another root word, number 502, Elf, okay, which means to learn, to teach. Okay, so as you can see, the Hebrew word for 1,000, Aleph, can mean taught ones or disciples. It can also mean the strong leader or the head of the household. Okay, now this right here is the Aleph and the Taw. As you can see, there's the head of the ox in the gold, and then there's the Taw, which looks just like a cross. Some people think the cross is a pagan symbol. Now, of course, the Catholic Church has used the cross in an improper way, but it didn't start out as a pagan symbol. People need to understand that, okay? So pictured here is the Paleo-pictograph letter Aleph. This is an actual word, 1,000. And it is not limited to individuals, but it can also pertain to heads of families or even heads of armies, okay? In Revelation 7 and 14, the term 144,000 does not tell us if it is speaking of 144,000 individuals or 144,000 families. As I already mentioned, there is a rule of interpretation called the law of first mention. This rule dictates that the first time a concept is presented in Scripture, it sets a precedent for when it appears later on in the Bible. Numbers 1, 2 through 16 suggests that the method in which Israel was numbered was according to their heads of household. Okay? Now, when our Messiah fed the multitudes, the number presented in the gospel accounts only represents the heads of families and not the actual number of individuals who were fed. In Mattatyahu, or Matthew 14:21, it says, and they that had eaten were about 5,000 men beside women and children. So, we think he fed 5,000 people. No, it was a much bigger number. It was probably like 20,000 or 30,000, because back then people had more than 2 kids. Nowadays, everybody just has usually 2 kids and they're done. In those days, they had lots of kids. So when you consider 5,000 men, and if each man had, let's just say, 6 kids, that's like 30,000 people, okay? Mark 6:44 says, and they did eat of the loaves, and they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men, okay? It doesn't mention the women and the children. Now, the Greek word in the above verse for men is aner, and it literally means husband, individual male, okay? So in Ezekiel 40, the temple dimensions during the millennium, okay, because Ezekiel 40 through 48 is describing the temple during the millennium. The temple dimensions are being measured out in reeds. The Hebrew word for reeds is as follows. It's number 7070. It's kane, and it literally means a reed, a stalk, a bone, okay? There's a hint there, a bone, a human part, a human body part, right? A measuring rod as unit of measure, 6 cubits. A cubit is 12 inches. So a cubit is 6 cubits is like 6 feet. A beam of scales for scales themselves, shaft of a lampstand. Okay. And in the book of Revelation, lampstands are likened unto people. Branches, lampstand, shoulder joint. So all these synonyms give us a hint. Okay, this word has a variety of meanings that could point to a human being, such as a bone and shoulder joint. Our Messiah likened the 7 assemblies to lampstands in the first 3 chapters of Revelation. Therefore, this word reeds as a unit of measuring Ezekiel's temple can certainly pertain to human beings rather than building materials. The unit of measure is 6 cubits, and a cubit is about 12 inches. This is roughly about 6 feet tall, which is the average stature of a fully grown human being. The word branch has been prophetically used to mean tribes of Israel. Ezekiel 37 talks about the 2 branches, the branch for Judah and the branch for Ephraim. He says, take 2 sticks and write upon them, one for Judah and one for Joseph or Ephraim. And he says, they shall become one stick in my hand. Romans 11, Paul talks about the wild branches and the natural branches. And the word for lampstand, menorah, has been used to pertain to assemblies of people that belong to Yahuwah. Okay, Revelation 1:20. Yahushua told us in Revelation 1:20, the 7 golden candlesticks which you saw in my right hand are the 7 assemblies. Okay, Zechariah 4 talks about the 2 olive trees. Okay, and the 2 candlesticks, which is repeated again in Revelation 11. Okay, the word bone, shoulder joint, also hints at Ezekiel 37's valley of dry bones coming back to life. You see, the Hebrew word for reed also means 6 cubits, and the number 6 is the number of man, since humans were created on the 6th day of creation. These measuring units that are being used in Ezekiel and also in the New Jerusalem in Revelation 21 are pointing to an eternal concept. This type of prophetic language pertains to a temple that is made without human hands. We are now beginning to see that Yahuwah is building a temple made up of lively stones, living stones, humans, people. Okay? First Kepha or 1 Peter 2:5 says, you also as lively stones are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim by Yahushua Messiah. In Ezekiel 45 through 48, the inheritance for Israel is being measured out, as well as the dimensions to the temple. The words used to describe the measurements of 1,000 is the very same word, aleph. Okay? So when you read through these 3 chapters of Ezekiel 45 through 48, every time you come upon the word 1,000, it's the Hebrew letter aleph. Okay? Meaning the leader, the strong leader. Okay? This word carries with it the suggestion that the firstborn, as well as the first fruits of the wave sheaf offering, is what is being set aside as belonging to Yahuwah. Shemot, Exodus 13:2. Sanctify unto me all the firstborn. Whatsoever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. Okay? Then in Shemot, Exodus 13:13, it says, and every firstling of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you will not redeem it, then you shall break his neck, and all the firstborn of man among your children shall you redeem. You see, the firstborn of humans, as well as animals and crops, all belong to Yahuwah. The word aleph, being the first letter and the strong leader of a family, seems to imply that all those who are born again of incorruptible seed are going to be the first to be married. Just like Leah. Leah was the first to get married to Jacob, right? Leah was the firstborn daughter of Laban. Those who are the elect are called my firstborn. In Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 31:9, it says, they shall come with weeping and with supplications will I lead them. I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Now, biologically speaking, Ephraim was not the firstborn. Okay? It was his older brother, Manasseh. You see, Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh was the firstborn, biologically speaking. But why does he call Ephraim my firstborn? because after Yahushua died on the tree, the house of Judah rejected his gospel. And therefore, where did the Gentiles were the ones who received the gospel. The gospel went out to the nations. Okay? Ephraim represents a multitude of nations. You see, Ephraim was called by his grandfather Jacob. He said, his seed shall become a multitude of nations. Okay? Genesis 48:19. So the title firstborn pertains to the multitudes that are given the letter Aleph. In other words, the firstborn status. This is precisely what the number 1,000 means. It means the firstborn. Okay? Are you the firstborn from among the dead? Are you going to be one of the first to be resurrected with Messiah? Are you going to be among the first to get married like Leah? Okay? So it is identified by the Paleo-Hebrew pictograph letter Aleph, as seen in the above illustration. Now, the red heifer, or the Aleph, is the identifying mark for Ephraim, because Ephraim needed a red heifer sacrifice. Let me explain. You see, in the parable of the prodigal son, when the prodigal son came back home to the father, what did the father do? He killed the fatted calf. What is the fatted calf? It's the red heifer. Okay? So when he came home in Luke 15, the father kills a fatted calf. That's the red heifer. Okay? Messiah, Yahushua, performed the red heifer sacrifice for Ephraim when he was crucified outside the city limits of Jerusalem. Now, let me explain. If you go to Numbers 19:1 through 10, you will read the ordinance of the red heifer. The ordinance of the red heifer is done whenever a dead body is found in the land of Israel. If a dead body is just found and they don't know who killed the person, or if the person was killed by accident, like manslaughter, and nobody's claiming to be the murderer, okay? Or even if the person just drops dead from, a heart attack or poisoning or whatever the case may be, a wild animal, there's a dead body, and the land becomes defiled by the shedding of innocent blood. The ordinance that was done for that was the ordinance of the red heifer. The high priest would, and all his priests working with him, would escort, they would find the red heifer that was perfect and spotless, and they would find a red heifer and they would escort the red heifer outside the city limits of Jerusalem. It's the only sacrifice that's done outside the city limits of Jerusalem. All the other sacrifices are done in the temple. That's the only one that was not. Okay? So when the house of Judah shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him," the whole nation was guilty of innocent blood. Okay? So what did he do? He literally was escorted outside the city limits of Jerusalem. Why? He was performing the ordinance of the red heifer. He was showing them, I'm the red heifer. I'm the one that's going to pay for your shedding of innocent blood. Okay? So Yahushua is the red heifer. Not only was he the Passover lamb, but he was the red heifer. You see, this was important because if the whole nation was defiled by the shedding of innocent blood, guess what? Their Passover lamb sacrifice was disqualified. Yahuwah could not recognize their Passover lamb sacrifice unless they killed the red heifer first and they sprinkled the blood of the heifer, or actually they took the ashes of the heifer, They took the ashes of the heifer, mixed it with water, and made a cleaning solution. They would cleanse all the articles in the temple with the red heifer, and then, including the altar, when they performed the Passover lamb sacrifice, it was accepted. You see, he thought of everything. He knew that the morning before his crucifixion, the whole nation was going to shout, crucify him, and they were going to become guilty of innocent blood as a whole nation. So the red heifer is what was done when the whole nation was guilty of innocent blood. And Yahushua performed the pattern of the red heifer when he was escorted outside the city limits of Jerusalem and taken to the place of the skull. Okay, now they didn't burn his body into ashes. However, that word in the Hebrew for consumed means to be completely destroyed, and his body was completely destroyed. And not only that, the ordinance for the red heifer says that the ashes of the heifer must be scooped up into a brand new container that had never been used. Well, Joseph of Arimathea donated his brand new tomb that had never been used for the burial of our Messiah's body. So there you have it. He fulfilled the pattern of the red heifer. He was escorted outside the city limits. He became the red heifer for who? For those that had shed innocent blood, the prodigal son. See, when the house of Judah shouted, crucify him, what did they do? They disqualified themselves. They disqualified themselves from their own inheritance. And they needed a fatted calf. That's why the father killed a fatted calf for the prodigal son. Okay? So what is also interesting is that Old Covenant Israel is given a mark in their foreheads, according to Ezekiel 9. And this mark is the Taw. Okay? When you look up the word in Ezekiel 9, it's the last Hebrew letter, the Taw. This is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet, thus meaning the last born. You see, the Taw is an identifying mark signifying those who will be redeemed last. Okay? The Hebrew word for mark in Ezekiel 9:4 is number 8420 in the Strong's Concordance, which is the Taw. See, in the account where Jacob, crossed his hands over in Genesis 48:13 through 14, he gave the firstborn status to the younger grandson, Ephraim. And he gave the lastborn status to the older son, Manasseh. Okay, what was he doing? What was the prophetic significance of what he was doing? Well, you see, the name Manasseh means to cause to forget. Old Covenant Israel has been forgotten and forsaken, divorced for a little while. Isaiah 54:6-7 tells us that even though they were forsaken and forgotten and divorced, he said that they would be married to him again. However, New Covenant Israel is Ephraim, whose name literally means double fruit. You see, when the gospel went out into the nations accepted the gospel and they became doubly fruitful. Therefore, in the number 144,000 pertains to Old Covenant Israel. That's who I believe the number of people are in Revelation 7. Okay? They are just given a seal in the forehead. That's all it says about them. They're given a seal, and that's it. But then that number is doubled. Not only is it doubled in the sense of multiplying them by the number 2, but is doubled in the sense of to the second power. Okay? In other words, because when you look up the Hebrew word for double, it can mean to the second power. So this means 144,000 times 144,000. In other words, too many to count. Too many people to count. In Revelation 14, the second group of 144,000 have their father's name written in their foreheads, indicated by the Aleph, the first or the father. The father is the leader. They have their father's name in their foreheads. You see, when Old Covenant Israel, the woman in Revelation 12 and the woman in Isaiah 54, when the woman gives birth to the man-child is renewed covenant Israel, Ephraim. Okay? Those that follow the Lamb wherever he goes. So when the woman in Revelation 12 is unredeemed Israel. She has not been redeemed yet. But she shall be saved when she gives birth to the man-child. She will then possess the double portion of the 144,000. See, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:7 says, for your shame you shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore in their land they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them. Now you'll notice in the above verse that the woman, Israel, is being referred to as you, but she is just one nation. However, Yahuwah goes on to describe Israel as they in the last part of this verse. Why the change in pronouns? Why is Israel first being spoken of in the first person, your and you, and then all of a sudden it's they and their land? They shall possess the double. Well, why? Why the change in pronouns? Why are they referred to in the first person at the beginning of the verse? And why are they spoken of in the third person, plural, at the end of the verse? It is because Israel was one nation, one woman. However, at one point in history, she was divided into two houses. She became known as the 10 northern tribes of the kingdom of Israel and the 2 southern tribes of the kingdom of Judah, which includes the tribe of Benjamin. So the story of how they were divided is told in 1 Kings 12. From these 2 houses, Ephraim and Judah were given another chance to become one new man. Ephesians 2:15, the apostle Shaul talks about that the Jews and Gentiles that are born again shall become one new man. However, not all who belong to these two groups have accepted our Messiah as of yet. You see, this prophecy of the one new man has been unfolding progressively since our Messiah died on the tree for us, and it will continue to unfold right up until his second coming. Okay? How do we know? Well, Ezekiel 37 tells us that there's a great army that's going to come up out of their graves, and the dead bones shall live again. And Ezekiel was told to prophesy to the dead bones, and that he was told to breathe life into these bones. And all of a sudden, there's this great army. And the great army is the whole house of Israel. And if you keep on reading, Ezekiel's told to take one stick and write upon it for Judah and his companions. That would be his Gentile companions. And then he says, and take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim and his companions. So in other words, the 2 houses of Israel have their companions who are grafted into them. Okay? And so we know that the one new man is not going to fully come together until the resurrection. Okay? This is how the woman, Jerusalem, will inherit the double. It is precisely for this reason that the tribe of Ephraim is not mentioned in Revelation 7. You see, Ephraim is in the hand of Joseph. Ezekiel 37:19. His father Joseph. Okay? So when Revelation 7 mentions Joseph, it's inclusive of Ephraim. Okay? Now, back to the meaning of the word thousand. You see, in the book of Revelation, there are 3 different words used for the English word thousand. Number 5505, which is kilias. Kilias means 1,000. Okay? There's another word, number 5507. It's plural, and it says of uncertain affinity, 1,000. Okay? So it can mean 1,000 times 1,000. Then there's this other word, number 3461, murius. Murius is a 10,000, by extension, a myriad, or indefinite number, 10,000. So morias can mean a larger number than 1,000. It's a multiple of 1,000, like 1,000 times 1,000, okay? In Revelation 7, there's a literal number of 144,000 heads of households that are being described, and they are named by tribe. They are numbered, and then they are sealed. However, after Old Covenant Israel are numbered, Then another group of people are mentioned right after that in Revelation 7. And this group are too numerous to count. Okay? If you keep on reading, it says they are too numerous to count. Go with me quickly to Revelation 7. You'll see what I'm talking about. Revelation 7. Okay? So right here, it's the 144,000 that are sealed in the foreheads. It doesn't say anything about them, like it doesn't say that they have their father's name in their foreheads. It doesn't say that they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. It doesn't say that they've washed their garments in the blood of the Lamb. It doesn't say that they're undefiled by the woman. It just says they're sealed. That's all it is. I believe this group right here is talking about all those that came back to Israel, the land of Israel, 1948. Now, I know what some of you are going to think, or thinking. Some of you think, oh, Israel didn't become a nation in 1948. There's lots of people saying that these days, and it's false. Israel did become a nation in 1948, despite the fact that the Zionists and the Illuminati government is controlling things right now. You see, Yahuwah uses the wealth of the wicked to perform his plans. So he used the Illuminati money. He used the money of the Rothschild family and the Rockefellers to perform this because, why? He's setting the stage for the last days when the remnant from the house of Judah are going to stand on the Mount of Olives, and they're going to look upon him whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. It says in Zechariah 12:10. So he's setting the stage. So yes, he did cause Israel to be reborn as a nation in 1948. I don't care what anybody tries to tell you. There's a lot of haters out there that hate Israel, even people in Hebrew roots. It's alarming. People are so hateful towards Israel just because of their leadership, and it's not their fault. There are 50,000 documented Messianic Jewish believers in Israel today, and that's a real statistic given by One for Israel Ministries. 50,000, whereas in 1948, I forget how many he said. What did that guy say? That guy Jerome, what did he say? How many were in Israel in 1948? I think it was like...
At the time, it was
a really small number.
Yeah, it was
like under 100.
It was like 12 families or something like that.
It was a real small number.
Families.
It was less than 100 people. So they have multiplied. Okay, 50,000 isn't that big of a number, but it's still big enough. And I believe there's probably more that are not documented that they don't know about. Okay, and so I believe that the first group of 144,000 are all those who came down to Israel in 1948, and they're those who keep the commandments of Yahuwah. They are sealed ahead of time. He knows they're going to accept Messiah when he returns. He knows that when his foot lands on the Mount of Olives, they're going to be standing there mourning for him. They are obedient to Torah as best as they know how. They don't know Yahushua just yet, but they are going to know him. He puts a seal in their forehead ahead of time, seals them for the day of redemption. Okay. And this is a much smaller number. There are 144,000 heads of families. Now, I don't believe it's a literal 144,000 individuals. I believe this is referring to 144,000 heads of households, but still it's a smaller number. Okay. Now, after these people are numbered and sealed in the foreheads, what does it say right here? It says a great multitude from every nation. Right after this, it says, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude. What does the name Ephraim mean? It means double fruit. And what did Jacob prophesy over his grandson Ephraim? He says, you shall become a multitude of nations. Okay. Ephraim are the born again believers in the nations who are grafted in. Okay. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. I believe this is referring to The second group of 144,000 that are mentioned in Revelation 14. Because what does it say about them in Revelation 14? It says that they're standing on Mount Zion with the Lamb, and that they follow the Lamb wherever he goes, and they've washed their garments with the blood of the Lamb, and they've got palms in their hands. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation to our Elohim, which sits upon the throne, and unto the Lamb." And all the angels stood round about the throne and about the elders and the four beasts, and fell before the throne on their faces and worshipped Elohim, saying, Amen, blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. And one of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in white robes? And whence came they? In other words, where did they come from? And I said unto him, Sir, you know. And he said unto me, These are they which came out of great tribulation. So this is after the great tribulation, after the 3.5 years are finished. Okay, the two witnesses, and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. You see, this is the same group mentioned in Revelation 14, the larger group of 144,000, the redeemed. Therefore are they before the throne of Elohim, and serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sits on the throne shall dwell among them. And they shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb, which is in the midst of the throne, shall feed them, and shall lead them unto living fountains of waters. And Elohim shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. I get so emotional reading that. It's awesome. Now you go to Revelation 14, and it's the same people. It says in Revelation 14:1, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the beasts, the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Okay. These are they which were not defiled with women. Now, the Greek word here, women, it's not plural. If you look it up in the Greek, gune, it's a singular word, woman. It's describing the mother harlot church system. They're undefiled by the mother harlot church system. And it says, for they are virgins. It doesn't mean they're physically virgins. It doesn't mean, you've heard for years people saying the 144,000 or 144 male virgins that have never procreated. That's not true. We are told, we are commanded to procreate. Okay? They are virgins in the sense of they are spotless. They are unstained by the mother harlot church system. They are like virgins in that sense, just like the parable of the 10 virgins with oil in their lamps. Doesn't mean that they're physically virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto Elohim and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of Elohim. Well, guile means deception, right? So in their mouth is no deception. Okay? So back to the blog. We've got 4 minutes left, and we're going to continue next week. Okay? So this group of 144,000 in Revelation 14 falls into the category of the myriad, or the indefinite number, which is also consistent with the Hebrew word aleph, which once again pertains to a family rather than an individual. In Revelation 14, the number 144,000 is not describing individuals, but it is describing families or large groups that are too numerous to count. Note that it does not say 144,000 people or individuals. It can be referring to 144,000 families, 144,000 armies or nations even. Okay? The double portion inheritance of Israel is hidden in the Hebrew scriptures. You see, what is even more revealing is that in Bamidbar, Numbers 31, verse 4, where Israel is being given their inheritance, the English does not display the fact that the word thousand from each tribe is doubled. Okay? You see, the more literal term is Aleph Matah, which means 1,000 branches. But this is repeated twice as Aleph Matah, Aleph Matah. Okay, here you see a screenshot of the e-sword. And in the screenshot, you see H4294, okay? And then you see H505. So Matah, which means branch, is number 4294. As you can see, it means a branch. It means a rod, a staff, or a tribe. And then the other word, H505, is Aleph, which means 1,000. So if you read it in English, it just says of every tribe 1,000 throughout all the tribes of Israel. When you read it in Hebrew, it says 1,000 times 1,000. So it's a much bigger number. The English doesn't portray it correctly. It's 1,000 times 1,000. Double, the double portion. Okay? Here's how it reads in English. Bamidbar, Numbers 31:4. Send 1,000 from each tribe of all the tribes of Israel for the campaign. Here's how it reads in English, in Hebrew. Bamidbar 31:4. Send an Aleph Matah, 1,000 branches, an Aleph Matah, 1,000 branches from each Matah tribe of all the tribes of Israel for the campaign. You see, the formula here is 1,000 times 1,000 branches. That's the double portion. The double portion isn't just limited to dividing something or multiplying something by 2. The double portion is to the second power, dividing it by its or multiplying it by itself. 1,000 times 1,000. Okay? This gives us more credit. This gives more credibility to the idea that Revelation 14. In Revelation 14, Israel is going to receive the double portion inheritance through the man-child. That is the tribe of Ephraim, the multitude of nations that are too many to count. You see, what we're seeing here is that when Yahuwah is handing out the inheritance to Israel, the word 1,000, Aleph, is actually doubled. And the word tribes, branches, or matah is doubled. This is the double portion inheritance promised to Old Covenant Israel in the last days. But this only happens once she gives birth to the man-child. You see, Yeshayahu, Isaiah 61:7 says, "For your shame you shall have double, and for confusion they shall rejoice in their portion. Therefore in their land they shall possess the double. Everlasting joy shall be unto them." Okay. Yehusaph, Joseph, inherits the double. Okay. We're going to stop here. Next week, you're going to learn all about how Joseph inherited a double portion from his father Jacob and why, and how Joseph's double portion inheritance pertains to the 144,000. And so that is the conclusion of today's lesson. We will be back next week. Shabbat Shalom.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.